Hello everybody, I'm Kate Cass, and welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie 2. A while back, I reviewed the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and while I gave it a generally positive review, I was kind of in the middle about it overall. I appreciate that it wasn't a train wreck, and that it kept a lot of the goofy yet sincere elements that make Sonic so special, but there were still things about it that bugged me. It got by just fine when everyone thought it was going to be a disaster, but wasn't particularly remarkable. That said, I did see potential in this take on the Sonic universe, and all the teasers at the end did make me want to see more. I feel like they could go bigger. Now the groundwork is laid to do just that, and I was curious to see what that would be like. They were pretty quiet about this movie for a long time, possibly due to delays caused by the pandemic, but still, it was agonizing waiting for more information about Sonic the Hedgehog 2. No, not that one, and I promise that's the only time I'm gonna make that joke. Then, the trailer finally dropped, and it was saying and doing all the right things. Robotnik chasing after the Master Emerald for planet-conquering power, Tails in the tornado, Sonic snowboarding away from a fleet of badniks, Knuckles giving Sonic the fight of his life. I was speechless. No, I wasn't. I was rambling a lot. There was a lot of incoherent screaming. I was in a Discord call at the time, so people can probably vouch for this. All this to say, I didn't need any more convincing. I was excited. April couldn't come soon enough. So, did Sonic the Hedgehog 2 live up to my hype? Well, without further ado, let's speed right in and see for ourselves. Now no longer in hiding, Sonic has been trying to find his calling and use his powers for good, with his obvious inexperience getting in the way. But things get turned up a notch when Robotnik returns for revenge, with a new ally by his side, Knuckles the Echidna, played by Idris Elba. Luckily, Sonic's got a new ally by his side with Tails, played by Colleen O'Shaughnessy. What follows is a race between the four to acquire the ultimate power in the universe, the Master Emerald. Like, where do I even? There's so much. I have a million things to say about this movie and no idea where to start. Okay, let's start somewhere familiar and see how it's changed, with our hero and villain. Upon first impressions with this continuation, this feels much more familiar to the Sonic and Eggman I know. Admittedly, one of the things that made the first movie stick out is its attempts to give origins to this iconic hero-villain duo, which meant seeing new takes on these characters that were kind of interesting. But now we've hit the point where they've developed into their more recognized personalities. It's something I tend to really like about well-made sequels. The introductions are out of the way, and now we can see how far the characters have come and challenge them in new ways. When it comes to Sonic, right away you can see that he's grown more into the confident hero type. Or at least he's trying to. This version of Sonic is still very green. He's not afraid or hiding anymore, and it is really nice to see the contrast between the first movie's intro to Green Hill and this one, where Sonic is out in the open and greeted by townspeople, but he also doesn't really know what he's doing. But it does play to Ben Schwartz's strengths as an actor. He's really good at playing unearned confidence, followed by immediate panic.
The blue dawn that banishes the darkest. Holy crap!
It's a nice way to develop Sonic as a character from where he was in the first movie, but still show that he's having difficulties growing up. Because he's still trying to figure out what he's supposed to do with these powers he has, and in the meantime, he's content to live the life he has now with a home and a family. I'm sorry, I like the domestic antics. Are they my favorite part of the film? Not at all. But I think they're fun, and yeah, when you've got a wild animal / runaway alien living in your house, things are gonna get hectic. It's cute, it's funny, it's short, I like it. Mind you, I don't like all of it. Just like last time, there were a few times where the humor straight up made me groan, with the return of fart jokes, flossing, and now John Ralphio callbacks.
The worst!
Why? However, making the opening fun and silly makes it more dramatic once things suddenly get serious, when Robotnik re-enters the picture. And the transformation of Robotnik between films is... it's magnificent. Spending almost a year on a mushroom planet with nothing to do but plot his revenge has led to this somewhat manic freelance scientist with unconventional robotic aspirations becoming the completely unhinged mad scientist who will use all of his brilliance to conquer the world and squash a 3-foot-tall blue hedgehog. Once I heard movie Robotnik call Sonic the wretched rodent, I just thought, yep, this is where I wanted to be last time. Whatever restraints were on Carrie's acting in the last movie are unlocked. He's embodying the maniacal, obsessed supervillain infused with Carrie's signature comedic delivery to the fullest. It's a blast, with even more quotable lines than last time.
So will that idiot sheriff and his wife.
And your little dog, too!
I don't want to die like this! my vision board for years. It's a law of attraction.
Sonic has heart, but will he lose the quill to live?
That really opened up the space. I can't even picture it with an impenetrable wall now.
Mr. Jim Never Does Sequels Carey broke his long-standing rule for this, and thank God he did. But just in case you forgot this is movie Robotnik, Agent Stone returns with him as well. Is it controversial to say Agent Stone is the best thing these movies have created? I don't think it is. I already liked him a lot in the first movie, and the fact that his devotion to Robotnik is so elevated this time just makes it even better. He gives off the same vibe as LeFou in the live-action Beauty and the Beast. You know, for reasons.
I knew you'd come back, sir. I never stopped steaming your Austrian goat's milk.
I've been told I'm clingy, but I really don't get it.
From the second Robotnik returns, the chase is on, becoming a non-stop quest between the two to gain what they discover is a key to ultimate power. We'll come back to that, but what matters now is that neither of them are going on these quests alone. By far, the most exciting thing about Sonic the Hedgehog 2 going in is the introduction of Tails and Knuckles into the movie universe. Tails' appearance at the end of the first movie was what made me eager enough to even anticipate more of these movies. And in this film, Tails debuts doing what he does best: help Sonic out and deliver exposition. Now, unlike Sonic and Robotnik, who don't really have concrete backstories, which meant the movie could basically do whatever it wanted, Tails does have an in-game history. Kind of. A lot of it is implied because it's still a Genesis game, but parts of it come up a lot in the franchise. Tails was a lonely little fox, often the victim of bullying, but one day he spotted Sonic and admired him so much that he just started following him around. But Sonic realized he was nice and helpful, so they became buds. You know when you have a following online, sometimes you'll get someone who starts liking a lot of your posts and commenting frequently, and it could get weird, but it actually turns out you have a lot in common and get along really well, and you wind up developing a real friendship? This is kind of like that. Trust me, I have been both the Sonic and Tails in this scenario. I'm not gonna name names, but if you know, you know. Hi guys. Love you. So, when it comes to the movie, they more or less follow that. We don't know much about where Tails comes from, but we know that he was very isolated. People thought he was weird because of his extra tail and intelligence and treated him like an outcast. What gives him the courage to venture out is wanting to help someone he admires. Sonic. Even then, he's clearly out of his comfort zone. He's scared and timid around everyone and everything except Sonic. But Sonic pushes him and encourages him to help on this quest and assures him that no matter what they have to tackle, they'll do it together. I really love how they establish what makes Sonic and Tails such great friends. They have conflicting personalities, but they complement each other and are strongest together. I was worried Tails would get overlooked here when I found out Knuckles would be in the movie too, but they take a good amount of time to build their friendship up from scratch rather than relying on previous connections with the franchise. All it takes is a little trust, having each other's backs, a bit of camaraderie, and a dance battle. Apparently. Yeah, the dance battle is pretty ridiculous, but you know, I think it actually works. 1, it's well animated. 2, it helps strengthen the budding friendship between Sonic and Tails. And 3, if the gang could win a Chaos Emerald through a baseball game and compete with Mario in the Olympics, this is not too absurd for this franchise. Also, mad props for getting Colleen O'Shaughnessy to voice Tails in this movie. You know, the actor who's played Tails in everything for almost a decade. Yeah, it's nice to see voice actors be cast in voice roles for feature films. What a novel concept. Now let's talk about Knuckles. I'm so glad I get to say this after so long, but in this movie, Knuckles is so badass. Look at him. Take notes, Boom. This is how you make Knuckles look jacked. Now, I'm sure most of you know that Knuckles is about to get his own mini-series, and I do intend to review that show at some point in the future, so I'll save a full look at the rise and fall, and now rise, of Knuckles for when we eventually get to that. But I'll still provide some context for why the way Knuckles is portrayed in this movie is such a big deal. Okay? Okay. Let's get into it. It's easy to forget, but when Knuckles debuted in Sonic 3, he became a wildly popular character, almost eclipsing Sonic's popularity for a while. Over time, Knuckles simply became overshadowed by the expanded cast and whatever role he played in the overall world getting pushed aside. But in the movies, none of those hurdles are there. And they have the opportunity to offer both a nostalgic experience and a new angle on the last Echidna. Knuckles has always been branded as Sonic's rival, but this is the first time in a long time that title feels remotely earned. Right from the second he steps into the film, he is power incarnate, only proven further in his confrontation with Sonic. That now famous shot of him stopping Sonic mid-spin dash made everyone lose their collective minds, and for good reason. Every fight between the two gets more intense than the last, providing a lot of those moments that I swear warped me right back to being 12 years old again by just how cool they were. Not only is Knuckles a match and then some for Sonic on a power level, but he also appears to know much more about the powers they wield than Sonic does. When he first runs into Robotnik, he recognizes the energy in Sonic's quill immediately and connects it to a long ago mission from his people that left him the last of his kind. They incorporate Knuckles' backstory of being the last of the Echidna tribe and Guardian of the Master Emerald pretty well into the movie. In fact, it's something of an origin story for him too, because since the Master Emerald is lost, he's not Guardian yet. He feels honor bound to avenge his people and find the emerald that was presumably stolen from them long ago. That sense of tradition and duty is so essential to Knuckles, but hasn't really been a thing since they stopped writing in the Master Emerald. With it now taking its destined place as the chased after MacGuffin, we get that back here. It's almost like revisiting an old friend. This is another way he rivals Sonic. The quest for the Master Emerald becomes a quest for the two of them unlocking the truth of the connection they share with this ultimate power. But while Sonic teams up with Tails to track down the Emerald and uncover those secrets, Robotnik convinces Knuckles that the best way to get the Emerald is to work together.
Of course.
This is another story device that we haven't seen for quite some time, but was a staple of early Sonic media. Robotnik tricking Knuckles into teaming up with him. I get why they stopped doing this. The longer Knuckles is on the team, the more contrived it's going to get that he keeps falling for this. Even Sonic X started making jokes about it 20 years ago.
Dr. Eggman is always saying he'll abandon his evil ways, but he never does. And yet every time, he somehow gets you to believe him. We shouldn't work with Eggman. He's trying to trick us. Yeah, don't even think about it, Knuckles.
I didn't say anything.
But again, now that we're in a new continuity with its own history slowly being developed, we can revisit this. And like with Sonic and Tails meeting for the first time, there is something oddly nostalgic about watching this again. But it does connect to a part of Knuckles' personality that a lot of people were concerned would be mishandled again: his naivety. This has ranged from him being a bit too trusting and short-sighted, to clumsy and thick-headed, to downright, oh my god, how is this guy still breathing, levels of stupidity. When I reviewed the first movie, Knuckles had just been revealed, and in response, I said, how they handle Knuckles could make or break the sequel for me, so don't let me down. This is mostly what I was talking about. Whenever writers aren't sure what to do with Knuckles or attempt to make him more comedic, this is the first trait to get exaggerated or just plain flanderized. And since the humor has never been my favorite part of these movies, I was worried this was gonna happen again. But that's not what happens. In a brilliant move, they incorporate Knuckles' naivety into him being unfamiliar with this world and possibly from him being isolated for so long. He takes things very literally and is abrasive in almost all of his responses.
Tiny magic hedgehog destroyed.
Metaphor.
Sorta.
It carries an ignorant yet serious tone that's perfect for the character. A lot of this is punctuated by the voice work of Mr. Idris Elba. He does a fantastic job playing the Echidna in the serious, comedic, and when he tries to be serious but they're comedic moments.
Dot, 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 dot.
Excellent casting. Knuckles may be the mysterious rival of the film, but as it goes on, we learn more about him and see that deep down, he's lost and alone and just out to fulfill a long-lost purpose. In his own way, trying to make sure the sacrifice of his people wasn't in vain. Even after all that analysis, I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate all the thought and care that went into portraying Knuckles in this movie. It'd be intriguing and fun to newcomers and a welcome reunion with a great character for longtime fans. But let's talk a bit more about what all of them are after. Not only is this the movie debut of the Master Emerald, but we haven't seen much of that famous gem in Sonic media in a long time. I think the only place it's appeared regularly is in the IDW comics. The recent shows haven't featured it, and it's barely been a part of the games in the last 15 years. I've really missed Sonic lore connected to the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald, and it feels so good to see that revisited again. It's not only compensating for something in the franchise that's been lacking recently, but it makes this movie feel more like an authentic Sonic story than the first. There were hints to this area of world building in the first movie, but that's all they were. Hints. If you weren't looking for the little references, they're blinking and miss it. But now we have the opportunity to expand on those hints from the first film and retool the lore behind the emeralds to fit in with the new canon of the films. We finally get more context to one of the most intriguing scenes in the first movie, the battle between Longclaw and the Echidna tribe. So the story is that the Echidna were the original forgers of the Chaos Emeralds, but fearing the power they wield, the owls took the Master Emerald and hid it away, with the Echidna trying to retrieve it ever since. This explains why Sonic and Knuckles have similar powers. They both have a connection to these warring tribes and have been left by their predecessors to retrieve that power in their names. Sonic wasn't sent to Earth randomly for his protection after all. He was sent there because the Master Emerald was hidden there. Why the map didn't tell Sonic this information that he's meant to guard a relic of ultimate power anytime in the 8 years he's been here is anyone's guess. Maybe it would only play after he unlocked his true power, which was a few months ago. I don't know, this movie isn't perfect. The lore behind the Chaos Emeralds is pretty different depending on which version of canon you're talking about, so I think this is a pretty solid story for this universe. It answers a lot of questions I had during the first film, and turns this movie into a much more grand adventure, with more exotic locations, elaborate action sequences, and much higher stakes than last time. On top of the callbacks to characters' backstories, personality traits, and aspects of the Sonic universe untouched for quite some time, there are also a lot of references to the Sonic franchise scattered throughout the film. Like with the last video, there's no way I could point them all out, because we'd be here all day, and I'm sure there are already videos out there dedicated to that, but here are some that I noticed and got a kick out of. I love that Robotnik's robots now have a similar look to the classic Bagnets, and the way they translated the Eggman costume looks really good. It has a lot of the same features, but it's subtle at the same time. Unlike the Eggman logo, but it's still nice to see it used in the film. Speaking of Robotnik, a lot of fans noticed right away that Agent Stone now works at the Meme Bean coffee shop. That's a deep cut, and I love it. The first big action scene of the movie had moments that reminded me of Sonic Adventures 1 and 2, with Sonic standing on a rooftop in the moonlight, the big armored truck causing havoc, and the explosion of the sewers. But that could be me overthinking it. But seeing the familiar sight of Sonic snowboarding is definitely not me overthinking. Sonic's done that several times in the games, like the 90s and 2000s icon he is, and it was so cool to get to see him hit the slopes again. Tails also gets to pilot the tornado, which he stole in this universe. Well, he's the good guy, so I guess he borrowed it. This is a small one, but in the beginning of the film, there's these marauder aliens who have bird-like features. Did that remind anyone else of the Babylon Rogues? If this list that was making the rounds of what games the movie crew are allowed to reference is correct, Sonic Riders is something they could tackle someday, so who knows? I can only imagine how badly Jet would want some of that sweet Hollywood gold. The inclusion of the Chaos Emeralds also includes some callbacks. Some of you actually pointed this out to me, but the Owl Clan in the movies is not a random choice. There are carvings of owls in the ruins of Angel Island in Sonic 3. I always like when adaptations can take small details like that and expand on them. And the temple the Master Emerald winds up being in this movie does resemble the Mystic Ruins quite a bit. But because we're dealing with the lore behind the Chaos Emeralds and the history of the Echidna, of course there's some stuff here that as soon as I saw it, I knew why a certain former Sonic comic writer had been ranting about this movie on Twitter. I mean, yeah, Knuckles' dad is there for like 5 seconds, and it's a completely different version from the one in the comics. And this ancient Echidna kind of resembles Enerjack, like if you squint, but these are vague connections at best. I truly hope everyone involved in that Knuckles series has him blocked just for their own mental health. Of course, there are quite a few I missed, and even a couple we're going to talk about more later, but one area I really want to highlight that's reminiscent of other areas of the franchise is the animation. How Sonic was animated was a big point of discussion and controversy in the last video, and thankfully, none of that baggage is carried over here. I don't even want to think about how Tails and Knuckles would have looked if they'd gone with the original design approach. But between having stronger design choices right from the get-go, more opportunities for fun poses, and increasingly elaborate action sequences between characters, it offers more opportunities for exciting and expressive animation work. There are so many little touches this time that bring in animation and poses from the games and even other Sonic animated projects, but make them feel natural in this world. They're not lingering on it for a long time or anything, it's just how the characters move in these situations, and it looks really, really good. Interacting with the real-world situations is a bit more questionably convincing, but I don't care. The fights between Sonic and Knuckles really stand out in this regard. Not only do they harken back to other confrontations they've had throughout the franchise, but seeing it all on the big screen makes these fights so exciting. There were so many moments of me thinking, oh my god, that's so freaking cool in this movie, and it was usually thanks to these two. But of course, a movie like this can't just be similar to the rest of the franchise. Otherwise, what would be the point of making it? The first movie established a universe all its own, and now we have more game-specific story elements making their way in, now that we've reached the games that, well, have stories. But that doesn't mean the stuff from the first movie should get lost. It now just has to work alongside these new things. For example, our human characters. Pause. So, as I was writing the script for this review, some uncomfortable stuff came out regarding James Marsden. You can look it up for yourself if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's pretty widely reported by now, but all you need to know is that this means for the time being, I will only be talking about Tom the character, and not commenting on Marsden himself, or even using his name after this point. That's usually what I do when an actor becomes problematic, essentially disowning them from the character. What an actor does is not the character's fault, and I've unfortunately gotten pretty good at making that disconnect. And if you don't know what any of these people did, again, look it up. I don't want to talk about it. I usually don't comment on this kind of stuff in general, but this happened recently enough that I felt like I had to. Also, since Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has wrapped up on filming, this is going to be an elephant in the room for a while, and I wanted to let you all know what this meant going forward. This will be my stance on the incident for the foreseeable future, but I will likely not be bringing it up again in future videos about this franchise, outside of maybe a brief mention. Also, any comments that reference said incident that I'm talking about, even if you agree with my approach to it, will be deleted from the comment section. I'm not saying there isn't a conversation to be had about what happened, but I hope most would agree that the YouTube comment section on a review of the Alien Hedgehog movie hosted by a 30-something with the unicorn avatar is not the place to have it. It is not what this video is about, and it's not what I want this video that I've been wanting to make for almost 2 years to be taken over by. In my eyes, that would not be fair to the film itself or the hundreds of other people who worked tirelessly to make it as good as they could. Please feel free to comment your thoughts on this movie, I always encourage that, but not about this. Thank you for your understanding. Now let's return to the real subject of this video and actually talk about the characters of Sonic's Earthbound family, because I think they did a really good job handling the human characters. I'm not used to Sonic having stuff like a house or a bed, so checking in on how that life with Tom and Maddie is going was nice. Then they're sent off on a Hawaiian getaway for Maddie's sister's wedding. Actually shot at this gorgeous resort they were able to film at because this was right on the tail end of the pandemic and hotels needed any money they could get. If Tom and Maddie had been around when Robotnik showed up again, they would have just been in the way, and I don't think things would have escalated to the point that Sonic would have needed Tails' help. So this was a nice, realistic way to get the human characters out of the way until they need them again. However, notice how I said need them again, because while Tom and Maddie are absent for like 2/3 of the film, they aren't completely cast aside either. Maybe it's because I'm generally more tolerant of this kind of story than most of my demographic, but I really can't stand when sequels dispose of characters just because they can't think of something to do with them. You spend all that time establishing characters and getting the audience invested in them, don't waste that by dropping them at the first opportunity. Say what you want about that live-action Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, but it was a nice story about building the family between Dave and the Chipmunks. It was their story. It annoyed me so much when Dave was put out of commission in the squeakquel to make sure the chipmunks' antics wouldn't be interrupted, and then he was replaced by their helicopter guardian. Who even was this guy? Dave's cousin or something? I don't know, I can't be bothered to look it up.
Whatever, you know who you are!
I was so relieved when I slowly realized that wasn't gonna happen here. At first, it is kind of jarring to have those couple of scenes that cut back to Tom and Maddie like, yep, they're too busy getting ready for the wedding to realize their surrogate son is in Siberia. But they jump back in when he really needs them, with some antics when the warp ring gets swapped with a wedding ring that I at least approved of, and help rescue Sonic from the best reveal in the entire film.
Come on, buddy. Hey.
It's okay, everyone. We're federal agents.
This whole wedding was a front to get closer to Sonic and capture him by the newly formed Guardian Unit of Nations.
G.U.N. Seriously?
Gun, yeah.
This was a stroke of genius. This subplot could have just been a lazy way to dispose of the movie-exclusive characters and have them come back to a trash home before the credits rolled. Instead, it is now essential to the story, establishing one of the most important organizations in the Sonic universe into the films, and building on what happens now that Sonic has come out of hiding. It won't all lead to good things. We now see what some humans, especially the ones in power, will see him as. A threat. And I cannot begin to tell you how excited the implications here make me for future stories, because if I did, this video would be longer than it already is, but oh man, I have theories. Plus, this reveal gives us the best joke in the movie.
So is everyone here an agent? Are you an agent? Son of a...
Speaking of laughs, shout out to Natasha Rothwell as Maddie's sister Rachel. I kind of ignored Rachel in my review of the first movie because her role was pretty inconsequential and she honestly annoyed me. But while I can't say she's my favorite character, her moments were definitely way funnier this time, especially as she's out for the head of her fake fiance Randall, or Agent Handel. Wait, his name is Randall Handel? Huh. I mean, this probably isn't the series to be poking fun at names, but still. I've seen a lot of people roasting the wedding plot and how much it contrasts with the rest of the movie, but I don't know. Not only does it wind up being significant from a world-building standpoint, but by the time it becomes a rescue mission led by Maddie and Rachel, the action-fueled antics and outrageous moments of escalation fit pretty well for a Sonic story if you ask me. Tom and Maddie's contributions even go beyond their actual involvement. The more I watch this movie, the more I realized how much they've influenced Sonic in the short time they've known him. One of Sonic's key character traits is his capacity to make friends wherever he goes. He believes in people and just wants to be cool with everyone, even those who never felt like they belonged anywhere else. In this continuity, the acceptance from Tom and Maddie plays a big part in this development of his character. You don't have to like them as characters, but it's undeniable that they are integral to Sonic in this franchise, and if they keep using them like this, I'm okay with that. Although that weird little story point about Sonic calling Tom Dad is weird and incredibly tacked on. It's mentioned once at the beginning and again at the end, where it's resolved. It is the definition of pointless, but at least it's not intrusive. Sonic's been alone most of his life. He's never had to rely on anyone else because he's never been able to rely on anyone else, which is the same position Tails and Knuckles are in when they cross paths with the Blue Blur. Over the course of this adventure, Sonic offers the same gestures and sentiments of friendship and acceptance that his newfound family offered him.
Okay, what about a power bump?
Yes, power bump. That's more like it. It's a power bump. On Earth, it means an unbreakable promise.
Sonic, taking care of yourself is not what being a hero is all about. It's about taking responsibility for other people.
Being a hero isn't about taking care of yourself. It's about taking responsibility for other people.
An ancient Earth proverb?
No, sir, that's a Bukowski family special.
As time goes on, they're there to help him carry the burden of protecting the world and stopping the bad guys. For most of the movie, Sonic feels an immense responsibility to handle things on his own. The other side of the coin of having people you care about after being alone for so long is that there's now something to lose if you fail. Again, it's weird seeing Sonic have doubts. I'm not used to that. but I very much welcome it. Sonic acts much more heroic and is more powerful this time, but he's feeling the pressure as the threats escalate. But as things get bigger, the others keep stepping in to help him, and he learns how important it is to share the adventure and the responsibilities that come with it. The best moment when it comes to Sonic's character development probably comes when he gets to know Knuckles. Knuckles blames Sonic for the destruction of the last of his people, but Sonic also lost the only family he had at the time in that fight. Since then, Sonic's found a reliable support system, but the only person Knuckles has trusted since his people were wiped out is Robotnik. And you'll never guess how that turned out.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal!
Even when Knuckles was trying to hunt down our main hero, there was a sense of empathy and honor in his character, with comments and glances of disapproval at the times where Eggman is crooked, selfish, and dishonorable. Knuckles may be naive, but he's not oblivious. So when the inevitable betrayal happens, he feels ashamed at being tricked by the only person he trusted in a long time, and failing in his duty to retrieve the emerald. But Sonic's selfless actions and genuine hand in friendship are enough for him to trust again, this time in someone he can count on. Which is good, because we've got a problem that's gonna take all of them to fix.
Doctor.
Hi.
Whoa!
Super Eggman. Yeah, that's a new one. I'm kind of surprised the live-action movies were the first ones to do that, but boy did they take advantage of it. Not only is Carrie's performance getting more unhinged with each ounce of power that's coursing through Robotnik, but what does Dr. Robotnik do with ultimate power? Build a giant robot. Very on brand. See, I told you we weren't done with callbacks. Once I saw the Death Egg robot in the trailers, I knew we were in for something good. It's outrageous, it's very silly, it's just awesome. Stone even gets the co-pilot. I love that. As much as Robotnik does not care about Stone as a person, he sees his utility as a henchman. I love the twist on expectations that when Robotnik gains ultimate power, he takes Stone with him on his violent rampage. How sweet. From there, it just turns into the greatest thing. The Death Egg robot kicking off the climactic battle, Sonic standing on the wing of the tornado to stare it down and fight, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails banding together to form Team Sonic. There are no words. This might sound silly to some of you, but this was my Avengers moment. Team Sonic racing into the battle against Dr. Robotnik on the big screen will go down as one of the happiest times I've had in a movie theater. It's not just punching and spin dashing either, although most of it is, and it's so cool. But these three work as a great team, taking advantage of their powers, knowledge, and capabilities. Tails gets involved in the action, which is surprisingly rare. Knuckles straight up punches the Master Emerald out of Robotnik, and all of this is accomplished because they form a solid plan, distracting Robotnik using his obsession with Sonic against him. After all, at first, Robotnik was only interested in destroying Sonic, but once he hears about his so-called ultimate power, his next goal becomes acquiring it. Ever since Sonic got on Robotnik's radar, it's been his downfall. He's become so tunnel vision that he's gotten more deranged and obsessed in his pursuit to capture and defeat him. Illustrated in this truly amazing shot in the first movie that I was so mad at myself for not mentioning last time. Literally, the only thing in Robotnik's sight is Sonic, and it's been that way ever since. In the rest of the series, this has just always been their hero-villain dynamic, but here it's kinda cool to see the progression of Robotnik's descent into madness. It's an extreme hero-villain contrast that's actually demonstrated with the Master Emerald now affecting the playing field. While the history of the Chaos Emeralds can be varied, one constant ability of theirs is that they embed someone with lots of power, and it's amplified based on the best or worst traits of their heart, meaning whatever side is strongest becomes their entire being. I'm kind of surprised there isn't a throwaway line in the movie explaining it, but this seems to be how this still works based on the actions of our two bearers. Robotnik, despite having his #1 fan in the cockpit, has given into obsession and isolation, literally encasing himself in a cold, dark dome of metal and wire, surrounded by the only thing he cares about in the world, and using it to destroy everything else. Using the power of the Emerald to, knowingly or not, enhance his worst traits. On the opposite side, Sonic has risen above his own isolation and grown enough that he's inspired people and formed alliances with those just as brave as him. It's something that began to take shape once Sonic found something to truly fight for at the end of the first movie, and now with Tails and Knuckles, and even Tom and Maddie standing by him, he now has people to not just fight for, but fight with him. And with the power of the emeralds in play, those bonds of love, family, and friendship are about to make Sonic more powerful than ever before. The unveiling of Super Sonic was an unbelievably epic reveal. Don't get me wrong, I was anticipating it. As soon as we knew that the Emeralds were involved this time, this was a foregone conclusion. While this movie is mainly about the Master Emerald, for one, depending on which area of continuity you follow, that's sometimes enough, and two, you can actually see the Chaos Emeralds resting inside the Master Emerald when it's shattered briefly. A detail that I thought was pretty creative. Again, to some of you this might sound lame, but I am not kidding when I say that every time I watch this scene, I am awestruck. They couldn't have done a better job with Super Sonic's debut. The way he doesn't quip in this form, how quickly his power level goes up, the way he stops that giant robotic fist without even flinching, that might be the coolest thing I have ever seen in my life. It's at least in the top 5. It's incredible. But with that, the day is saved and Robotnik's fate is left ambiguous because we weren't sure if Carrie was returning again. Thankfully he is. Sonic and the others are now protecting the Master Emerald, but it appears the Chaos Emeralds are scattered to parts unknown. Truly, order in the Sonic universe has been restored. I even like the epilogue. I think it's super wholesome. I love how quickly Tom and Maddie are ready to adopt fuzzy little aliens almost immediately. And you all know I love my cinematic parallels, so going from the first time we were in this baseball field, where Sonic was so lonely he was playing against himself, to filling up the whole field with new friends and family, I just found it really sweet. And a great note to end the movie on.
There's something else.
Oh, okay, sorry, credit scene. What are we doing this time?
When we were wiping Robotnik off our database, we found something. A file buried deep in our system and dating back over 50 years.
Wait. No.
My God. Project Shadow.
Oh my god! The number one thing I asked for happened! I can't believe it! The only thing that wasn't here that I predicted was Metal Sonic, and I can live with that! This is too much. Shadow's in the movies. He looks so good. They're gonna tell his story on the big screen. I'm so happy! Right. The conclusion. Sorry about that, but let's be honest. You were all waiting for that reaction. Anyway, overall, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 fulfills nearly all the potential that was untapped in the first movie. Like I've said, I liked the first movie quite a bit. I just didn't love it. I watched it maybe 3 times, and a couple of those were for the review. Sonic 2, though, I have watched multiple times, probably twice as many as the first in half the time, and I enjoyed it more every time. This is the kind of movie where if it came out when I was like 14, I'd be watching it 2, maybe 3 times a day. While the first movie has its charms, if someone were to tell me to pitch a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, this is much more in line with what I think most would want to see. It's a great middle ground of making something that's welcoming to newcomers, but endearing to longtime fans of this franchise without specifically catering to us. Revisiting familiar plot points and character motivations while putting their own spins on it that's introducing these characters to a whole new generation. In a way that does them all justice, too. The story feels like a traditional Sonic adventure that blends in with this newly established movie universe pretty smoothly. The introduction and reintroduction of the characters really feels like meeting them all over again in the best possible way. The animation work was sensational, the sentimental bits hit, the action is awesome, there are too many cool moments to count. It just feels so grand and special, and you know, it kind of made me appreciate the live action approach. I know, I'm usually the first to say that things that are typically animated are often an immediate downgrade when given the live action treatment, but Sonic's been in so many animated projects in the past, in fact I did a whole video on them, that if they told the story in that medium, it might have felt too derivative of stuff we've seen before. But the constant and varied chases, the upscaled set pieces, the Death Egg battle, and the debut of Super Sonic all feel so much more cinematic with a realistic coat of paint, and even spending time with Sonic and Green Hill I found to be very endearing. But here's the best part, that I don't think we're dwelling on enough. With this sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog is now a blockbuster franchise. Really think about that. This franchise that has more or less been on life support for years, where most would get mocked relentlessly if they said they enjoy the games or shows, has now taken the form of one of the most successful film series being made today. Along with Detective Pikachu, it's slowly lifted the video game movie curse, and the subgenre has only gotten better since. And there's something incredibly validating about that after having to grin and bear things for so long. Now this is important. I understand completely if you do not feel the same way. I've seen a lot of people throw around criticisms and accusations that these movies are an insult to Sonic rather than a love letter. And you know what? Those people are perfectly entitled to their opinion. I've said before that one of the reasons the Sonic fandom is so divisive is because Sonic has had so many identities since his creation that what Sonic the Hedgehog is means different things to different people. I'm not here to change anyone's minds on this movie. I learned a long time ago that is a losing battle when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog especially. But if you do disagree with me and you stuck around long enough to hear this disclaimer, thank you, I appreciate you listening at least. If this doesn't line up with your version of what the blue blur is, that is okay. What I will say is that I think it's reductive and dismissive to say this can't or shouldn't be what Sonic is for someone else, whether they've known Sonic for 20 years or 20 minutes. Or that these movies aren't made by people who genuinely care about Sonic the Hedgehog and are representing it as best they can. My goal here is to highlight all the thought and care that I saw in this film that went into a series I love that doesn't get that kind of care nearly as often as it should. Despite having some of the usual discourse bubbling underneath, justified or overblown, I've seen more enthusiasm for Sonic the Hedgehog in the last couple of years than I have in a very long time. It has never been a better time to be a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and these movies are a big reason for that. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is where I finally understood how all those big comic book fans feel when a world and characters they love is brought to life right in front of them on such a large scale. While it is admittedly happening more often because I'm in the nostalgia bait demographic now, it's not often that something I love so much gets this much attention, care, and enthusiasm. But it always feels so good, and I never take it for granted. Especially since I got to see this movie opening weekend with a very good friend of mine, and it was one of the best days ever. Much like Sonic in these movies, I too have gone from being lonely and isolated to sharing my adventure with newfound friends. So I'm making an active effort to experience the Sonic movie franchise as it grows with the people around me who are just as enthusiastic for its future as I am. There's a lot of big stuff coming in the Sonic the Hedgehog film universe, and after the sequel, I eagerly wait to see what they do next, with an unbreakable power bump to seal the deal. Did you bump your screen? I bet you bumped your screen. Thanks for watching, everyone. Definitely let me know what you thought of this movie in the comments below. That's why the series is called Let's Talk About. I want to give a very special thanks to my patrons who help support my content, including Chelsea A. Crandall, David L. Sproul, Jinx Productions, and Wait in the Wings. If you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to check out any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.